140 hours. I repeat, 140 hours. Not a lawsuit, not a leak, not a headline. 140 hours of tape exist tonight because somebody argued over an invoice, and the man who could have made that argument disappear for pocket change decided the number on the bottom line was too high. That is it. That is the whole hinge. Every empire in this story, every Grammy on every shelf, every carefully managed reputation that survived 25 years of rumor is currently sitting on top of a billing dispute over hours worked. And nobody, not one commentator, not one panel, not one late-night host, has told you the actual reason that footage left the building. So brace yourself, because the rest of this changes how the Diddy situation, the JayZ situation, and the Beyonce situation looks to you. Everybody is arguing about the wrong thing. The internet is arguing about whether 50 Cent has motive, whether JayZ deserves scrutiny, whether Beyonce should speak. Nobody is arguing about the timesheet. Here is what Gene Deal described, and Gene Deal was in those rooms. According to Gene Deal, the pattern was systematic. Hire young videographers. Hire them because young videographers are hungry, because proximity to Diddy looked like a career in itself. Then run those videographers around the clock. Yacht footage, plane footage, party footage, studio footage, on-call 24 hours, because Diddy reportedly wanted a camera present at all times. Then the invoice arrives. Gene Deal broke down the math out loud. 160-something hours in a week. 140 of those hours billed as worked. And instead of paying it, the call goes to the office. The call goes to the chief of staff. What is this I am paying? What is this I am paying? Read that again. That sentence is the origin point of everything. A man who reportedly spent a career purchasing silence, purchasing loyalty, purchasing access, purchasing entire narratives, looked at a videographer's hours and decided to negotiate. And in that moment, the most expensive mistake in modern music history got made. Because here is the part that should stop you cold. When a contract is not honored, the leverage flips. Gene Deal said it plainly. If a contract exists and that contract is not respected, the person holding the footage can do whatever that person wants with the footage. So the footage went to the highest bidder. And 50 Cent had to be the highest bidder. Now sit with the arithmetic. Whatever the disputed over time came to. It was almost certainly less than the price of a single night out. Less than a watch. Less than a fraction of 1% of what the fallout is going to cost. That is not a scandal. That is a clerical decision that grew teeth. Now let me walk you through why 140 hours is a different category of problem than anything the public has processed yet. A photograph is a moment. A photograph can be explained. A text message is a fragment, and fragments can be reframed by whoever has the better lawyer. 140 hours is a behavioral record. 140 hours captures what a person does when a room has gone quiet, who walks in without knocking, who gets spoken to in what tone, who handles the logistics, who makes the calls nobody wanted made, who is standing in the background of a frame that was never meant to include anybody at all. And according to 50 Cent, only part made the Netflix release because Netflix gave 4 episodes and 4 episodes has a hard ceiling. On the Sherri show, 50 Cent confirmed material got left out. Sherri asked directly whether a part 2 was coming. 50 Cent said the plan is YouTube. YouTube said more than once in that interview, said while laughing, understand what that choice signals. A platform decision is a liability decision. Streaming services run legal and insurance review before anything airs. YouTube is a different structure entirely. Choosing YouTube is a statement about what a network would refuse to carry. And 50 Cent added the detail that keeps industry lawyers awake. More people came forward after the release. In 50 Cent's own framing, people start feeling comfortable once other people go first. That is not a documentary anymore. That is an intake pipeline. Now here's where the thread tightens, and this is a part almost nobody connected. Commentary circulating around 50 Cent's teaser posts kept surfacing one name, Neil, not a celebrity, not a headline name, an operational name. The allegation being discussed is that footage exists showing conduct that lawyers would classify very differently than gossip, witness tampering, addresses being circulated, money being offered, legal fees being promised, obstruction, and separately, Diddy's former chef, Jordan, a woman who was set to testify before prosecutors trimmed the witness list, posted publicly and tagged Neil Dominique directly. The post asked why a former assistant told Sean Combs that federal investigators had made contact. The post asked why a person would be comfortable putting a witness in danger. The post asked whether information was flowing in 2 directions at once. Now overlay the 2 facts. A witness alleges an assistant was passing information about who the feds contacted, And a vault exists containing 140 hours of footage from the exact period when that information was allegedly moving. Documented conduct is a different legal universe. Alleged conduct gets litigated. Documented conduct gets sentenced. And if that documentation exists, it does not stop with one man. Everyone captured performing a task inside that footage becomes a subject rather than a spectator. And then there is a betrayal that explains the psychology of everything else. Consider Mark Agnifilo. Legal commentary has been blunt about the scale of this. Diddy avoided the outcome that could have ended everything, and avoided it because a defense strategy worked. Whatever anyone thinks of the client, the lawyering held. Then this. According to that same commentary, while Mark Agnifilo was on the phone speaking to a client with the expectation of privilege, the videographer was recording Mark Agnifilo telling a client the truth. You are damaging this case. You are making this worse. We are losing. And unaware that a camera was capturing every word of it. Now look at the behavior underneath that. The man building the defense was being recorded without notice by the man whose freedom depended on that defense. That is the operating principle of this entire story. Everything is content. Everyone is footage. Loyalty is a line item, and line items get disputed. Which brings us to the invoice again. Because the same instinct that recorded a defense attorney is the instinct that refused to pay a videographer. The same reflex. The same math. And that reflex handed the vault to a rival. Nobody took this empire down. This empire's own accounting department opened the door and left it open. Now, the pivot everybody feels coming, and nobody wants to say out loud. 50 Cent has teased the next phase. And the narrative crosshairs, by every read of that teaser, have moved toward JayZ. Understand why that reads as a structural event and not a personal one. For 25 years, JayZ occupied a position most artists never touch. Not popularity. Insulation. A commentator in the raw footage put precisely, saying JayZ reached a level where doing wrong was practically unavailable for a quarter century straight, and that this is the first stretch where that past has not been honored by white media. That same commentary noted the machinery that historically defended JayZ inside black media, and observed that this time the usual protectors cannot resolve it. Then came the sharpest observation in the entire raw record. Right now, silence is the worst available option for JayZ, because innocence has a strategy, and the strategy is answering questions. Letting an attorney speak in place of the principal reads as management rather than truth. Meanwhile, the legal picture escalated. Gene Deal referenced an official lawsuit and described the effect as emboldening. Gene Deal stated on Piers Morgan that 3 people described as victims of the Carters were being worked with, people described as ready to come forward, and framed the current attention as a thing that might give those people confidence. Gene Deal also claimed that everyone in the industry backdrop already knew the identity of the celebrity John Doe. Everyone knew. That phrase is the whole indictment, not the allegation. The knowing. Now let me do the thing nobody does. Let me map who wants this buried and how badly. Number 1, the corporate structures. Reports indicate aggressive effort is underway to block the documentary, with lawyers raising questions about how the material was obtained and whether material can legally be broadcast. Note carefully what is being contested. Not accuracy. Acquisition. When a defense pivots from that is false to you should not have that, the contents are no longer the argument. Number 2, 50 Cent's camp, which maintains the material was legally acquired from an abandoned project that stalled over internal disputes, which loops directly back to the invoice. Number 3, every executive who was in a room and stayed in the room. The raw record describes private gatherings, blurred boundaries, and tacit awareness. Self-preservation, fear, brand protection, silence chosen over intervention. Number 4, the institutions that profited from the system, because the deeper allegation here is not about one man. The allegation is about an industry that shaped young talent inside environments run by unchecked authority, where well-being lost to commercial ambition on a schedule. Number 5, the public, which wants the truth and holds the least leverage of anyone on this list. Count the votes. For powerful blocs want this closed quickly and quietly. One bloc wants everything released. That imbalance is why the vault matters more than any lawsuit, because a lawsuit runs on cooperation, and cooperation is precisely what money buys. Footage does not cooperate. Footage does not get intimidated. Footage does not change testimony because a phone call came in at midnight. Footage just plays. Gene Deal drew a distinction that deserves far more attention than it received. According to Gene Deal, both JayZ and Diddy understood leverage long before the public understood the concept existed. What separated the two was method. Diddy ran loud. Maximum visibility. Every room, Every camera, every stage. Gene Deal described the stage moment directly, the pat, and the public statement about who was permitted to use a first name. Gene Deal's point being that people do not perform that ritual with a stranger. JayZ ran quiet. Clinical distance. Boardrooms instead of nightclubs. Institutional embedding instead of spectacle. Access restricted rather than granted. Moments chosen with precision. One model bought influence through presence. The other model built influence through absence. And Gene Deal's conclusion is the reason this is not merely gossip. That method is exactly why JayZ is rarely captured in a compromising frame. Restriction is protection. Fewer rooms, fewer cameras, fewer witnesses. Which raises the only question that matters about a vault. 140 hours captures a loud operator constantly, but a loud operator's footage is populated. Rooms have other people standing in them. And the man who spent decades avoiding cameras cannot control what happens inside somebody else's camera. That is exposure nobody planned for. And the rivalry underneath this was never abstract. JayZ reportedly did not want 50 Cent at the Super Bowl. Eminem reportedly pushed for it and reportedly conditioned participation on 50 Cent's inclusion. The people speaking said the word plainly. Haters. The commentary went further, noting JayZ once warned Rockefeller affiliates that 50 Cent was coming and framing the whole arc around a simple claim. With Eminem, Dr. Dre, and 50 Cent, nobody outsold that camp. Nobody matched that effect. But watch how a rival gets described in that same conversation. 50 Cent operates on another level while remaining reachable. Still meets people. Still remembers the people who built the platform. And the pointed contrast, delivered as a question about the other side. When was the last time anybody actually saw JayZ? 2 definitions of power, sitting in one paragraph. One definition measured by how difficult access has become. The other measured by how many people can still get through the door. 20 years of that friction, and one of those 2 men now owns the tape. Then there is the exchange that will be quoted for a decade, and I need to frame it correctly, because it is comedy carrying a blade. 50 Cent on the accolades. I got the checks. I did not get the trophies. And the response in that room. JayZ got trophies because JayZ signed the contract, not a record contract. The marriage contract. The claim being made out loud, with the whole table laughing, was that the award started arriving in volume after the union with Beyonce. Somebody counted 18 cents. The framing was that the perception shifted from street artist to businessman, entrepreneur, family man, and that the shift itself unlocked institutional reward. Then the Vegas story, told through laughter. 50 Cent describing Beyonce jumping down from a window ledge mid-conversation, walking straight over, and 50 Cent genuinely not knowing what the appropriate response to that was. The line that landed, delivered mid-laughter. You are still Beyonce. People are treating that as a bit. It is not a bit. Buried inside it is a claim about who has been protecting whom for 20 years. And Beyonce is described in that story doing something Beyonce is never described doing publicly, moving first. Which brings us to the calculation that will determine how this ends. Speculation is building that the documentary's release could trigger a major personal and professional reset for Beyonce. And the framing everybody is using is wrong. The internet keeps treating this like a heartbreak question. It is not a heartbreak question. It is a portfolio question. Beyonce built something structurally unusual. A global brand engineered to survive storms that flatten peers, maintained through decades of controlled narrative. That machine has one non-negotiable requirement: distance from unresolved liability. So there are 3 doors and only 3. Door 1. Beyonce stands beside JayZ publicly. Loyalty reads as strength if the material never lands. If the material lands, that loyalty gets recut into a timeline and played back forever. Door 2. Beyonce says nothing. Historically the most effective option in the Carter playbook. And the raw record notes the follower losses accumulating while the silence continues. In that footage, somebody asked whether speaking is even wise, and the answer was blunt. Anything said becomes legally usable. Silence is not peace. Silence is legal strategy. Door 3. Beyonce creates distance, not divorce necessarily. Separation of assets, separation of calendars, separation of narrative, the move that preserves an independent legacy while the storm hits somebody else's side of the house. And here's the detail nobody is factoring. The raw record notes concerns about the beginning of that relationship, about ages, about who was 30-something and who was 17 or 18, about a club in 1998 and 1999 where somebody was present who should not have been admitted. That thread does not belong to JayZ alone. That thread belongs to the industry that watched and cleared the room, which is why Beyonce's decision is bigger than a marriage. If Beyonce moves, Beyonce becomes the most credible witness in music history without saying a single word. If Beyonce stays, the story becomes a joint account. Now back to the number, because this is a part one need you to keep. 140 hours. That vault exists because a bill went unpaid, not because a journalist dug, not because a witness broke, not because a prosecutor subpoenaed, because somebody looked at hours worked and decided the labor was negotiable. And that is the entire system in one gesture. An industry that treated the people holding the cameras as overhead, assistants, drivers, chefs, videographers, engineers, the people who saw everything and were paid the least to forget it. Gene Deal made the observation that belongs on a wall. Not everybody is dedicated. Not everybody is loyal to the point of stupid. For 30 years, the arrangement worked because the invisible people stayed invisible and stayed paid. Cash for silence. A clean transaction. Then one invoice got disputed, and the whole architecture learned something expensive. The camera does not belong to the subject. The camera belongs to whoever the subject last insulted. And what happened to 50 Cent afterward proves the point about the system, because the attack did not target the material. The attack targeted the messenger. Gene Deal noted exactly that, saying the reaction focused on 50 Cent motives and character rather than on behavior being exposed. Clout chasing, allegedly. Transparency reframed as betrayal. Gene Deal's read is that a defense mechanism is built into the industry itself, one that destroys the person holding the flashlight rather than examining what the flashlight found. That reflex is 30 years old, and that reflex is why nobody talked until now. So the questions on the table tonight. Will Beyonce protect the empire Beyonce built independently, or absorb the risks attached to JayZ? Does the material 50 Cent claims to hold actually reach a public platform, or does it die inside an injunction? Does the name Neil turn into a set of federal charges? And how many of the people currently asking whether 50 Cent has a motive are really asking whether their own faces appear somewhere inside that footage? Because that is the fear nobody is saying into a microphone, not what the vault proves about Diddy. What the vault proves about everyone who kept the calendar clear, kept the room stocked, kept the receipts, and kept quiet. 140 hours is roughly 6 days. 6 continuous days of a life recorded by a man who was eventually told the bill was too high. I want you to hold that number in your head the next time a statement gets released, the next time an attorney speaks for a client who will not speak, the next time somebody tells you nothing is coming. Something is already recorded. That is the difference between this and every rumor cycle before it. Rumors need living witnesses. Tape does not. Now tell me straight in the comments. Door 1, Door 2, or Door 3 for Beyonce. And tell me this too. If you had those 140 hours in your possession tonight, would you release everything at once? Or would you release it one piece at a time and let the industry watch itself sweat? Drop it below now. Read the replies, because the comment section on this one is going to be more informative than the documentary. I will see you on the next one.